You get home, open the fridge, and already picture dinner the way it looked in that photo you saved last week. 3 dishes, a garnish, something with a sauce. That's what dinner is supposed to look like. You close the fridge without touching anything and order food instead. Why does that feel so defeating? But here's the thing. For centuries in Japan, a real meal looked exactly like what you just skipped past. 1 dish, nothing else. And it wasn't seen as lazy. It was the entire point. It's called ichijū-issai, 1 soup, 1 dish. You've probably seen its fancier cousin online, ichijū-issai, 1 soup and 3 dishes, held up as the real traditional Japanese meal. Here's what usually gets left out of that story. The 3-dish version wasn't the everyday meal. It was banquet food, formalized centuries later for samurai ceremony. The 1-dish version came first, and for a long time, people who ate that way weren't seen as disciplined. They were seen as poor. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly when that changed, and it might change what enough means on your own table tonight. If you've seen authentic Japanese home cooking online, you've probably seen ichijū-issai, 1 soup, 3 dishes, arranged perfectly, usually captions something like, what real Japanese families eat every night. Real Japanese families mostly don't eat like that every night. Almost nobody has time to. That version traces back to the Muromachi period, centuries ago, a formal banquet style called honzen yori, built for samurai ceremony. Small individual tables, precise numbers of dishes, rules about which bowl went where. It was never meant to be a Tuesday. Ichijū-issai came first, and from somewhere completely different, Zen temples back in the Kamakura period, nearly 1,000 years ago. Monks needed to eat well enough to sit in meditation for hours, then work the rest of the day. So the meals were simple: rice, 1 bowl of soup, 1 dish alongside it. Nothing wasted, nothing extra. And here's the part that gets left out of almost every version of this story. For a long time, eating that way wasn't admired. It was what you did when you couldn't afford more. 1 soup, 1 dish was, for centuries, closer to an insult than a philosophy. It took hundreds of years and one very stubborn modern chef to change that. His name is Yoshiharu Doi. He's still alive, still cooking, still arguing the same point, that a good meal was never about the number of dishes on the table. It was about whether the person who made it had enough left over, enough time, enough energy to actually sit down and eat it with you. So what does that actually change, standing in front of your own fridge tonight? Not the number of dishes, the question underneath it. First, stop asking, is this enough to count as a real meal? And start asking, did I actually make this with my own hands for someone I care about, even if that someone is just me? Rice, 1 vegetable, a little protein if you have it. That's a complete meal. It was a complete meal 1,000 years ago, and it still is now. Nobody needs 3 side dishes to prove they tried. Doi has a phrase he repeats to people who feel guilty about simple cooking. The meal doesn't need to impress anyone. It just needs to nourish the person eating it. Second, and this is the one that actually shifts something, stop comparing your Tuesday to someone else's highlight reel. The photo you saved online almost certainly wasn't someone's everyday dinner either. It was the 1 meal out of 30 they thought was worth photographing. You're not failing. You are just following the wrong recipe. 1 soup, 1 dish, that's it. Made by hand, eaten slowly, with someone who matters. That was never the lesser meal. It was the real one. I think about temple kitchens sometimes, not the fancy ones, the plain ones, where a monk cooked the same simple meal for the 100th time that year. There was nothing sad about that repetition. If anything, the opposite. I know someone who started doing this after hearing about ichijū-issai for the first time. Rice, 1 dish, made properly, eaten without her phone at the table. She told me she used to think a good dinner meant a full table. Now she thinks it just means she actually paid attention while making it and actually paid attention while eating it. You don't need 3 dishes tonight. You need 1 thing made with your own hands and enough energy left to sit down and really taste it. That was never the smaller meal.